Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake Forty First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Carrie Linklater. I am your chairperson today. Joining me via Zoom is Mr. Ron Merritt, and to my left is Mr. Ian Mann. Our admin secretary today is Ms. Sally Caulfield, and our city assessor is Mr. Arif Das Mohammed. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board. The matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. This morning, we will be hearing items 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. And Ms. Caulfield, would you please confirm the assessor and the applicant?
Mr. Assessor, please stand. Please state your full name.
Arif Das Mohammed.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Jared Story.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey. Good morning, Mr. Das Mohammed and Mr. Story. And our first item is at 530 Berry Street, and I understand there is no preliminary issues to this matter. We're just looking at quantum. And whenever you're ready. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First file is Board Revision File number 22-960, roll number 0702120500. Address is 530 Berry Street. Roll year is 2023. Reference date is April 1st, 2021. Assessed value is $1,337,000. The parcel use is industrial warehouse. Number of buildings is 1. Number of premises is 4. It's a 1-story building. Actual year built and effective year built are both 1967. Wall height is 16 feet. It's zone manufacturing light. The land area is 20,821 square feet. Plan area is 10,620 square feet. Leasable area is 10,720 square feet. Land to plan area is 1.96 to 1. If you turn to my page 8, there is the map of the subject. It's located in the northwest quadrant of the city in St. James Industrial. On the bottom there is the subject parcel boundaries. It's located on the northwest corner of St. Matthews Avenue and Berry Street. Page 9 is the overhead view of the subject property. Same with page 10. Page 11 is the street view, front and the side view. And then the building sections are at the bottom of page 11. So on page 12 is the income and expense workup that was mailed into the city. So first of all, you'll note that this is a property owned by Artists Winnipeg Industrial REIT. So they're in the business of investing in real estate investment properties. So you'll note that the rental income here is $80,482.56, which works out to approximately $7.51 per square foot net. So there's the recoveries. They're recovering $57,704.86. You'll note that their management fee recovery is $6,580, which is approximately 8% of the rent. Down at the bottom are the expenses. You'll note again, they're expensing management fees at $5,323, which is approximately 6.6%. So they're collecting more than they are, so they're recovering more than they are expensing. So total operating expense down at the bottom line, 6499, is $55,776.90. Whereas the collective $57,704. At the bottom is the owner's expenses. You'll note that the total expenses are $57,490. So they've recovered not only the operating expenses, but the owner's expenses also. And that $1,713 of owner expenses works out to about 2% of the net rental income, and you'll note that in our workups we allow 3%. Okay, so on the following page is the tenant roll. So you'll note in the first column is the address, Unit 530, and then when the lease started. So the lease started in September 2018. You'll note it goes to 2023, and the net rental income works out to about $7.50. That's in the red box at the bottom. But you also notice they're collecting management fees, not only on the rent, they're collecting on the operating expenses, and they're collecting on the taxes. So 5% management fee on all those expenses. And that's where the 8% recoveries comes from. So all the units, they've collected that management expense on the operating expense and the taxes. You'll note that the second unit there, 532, it's the most recent rent. And that rent is set at $7.75. So I believe that is a better indication of the market rent because it's closer to the reference date of April 1st, 2021. And then the other two rents there, you'll note Unit 534 and 538 have been long-term tenants. They started in 2006 and 2007, respectively. So going back to my workup, so I've done, sorry, I'll just go to my rent comparables on page 3. So our rent comparables there, like the subject area, they're all industrial flex warehouse properties. They're located in the St. James industrial market. All leases are current in relation to the reference date. Effective year build ranges from 1964 to 1972. Wall heights range from 15 feet to 17 feet. Leasable areas range from approximately 2,100 square feet to 4,000 square feet. And net rents range from $7.50 to $7.95 per square foot. On the following page is our workup. So I redid this workup last night, and I actually used the actual NOI of $80,697.21. Now I know the actual NOI does not include a vacancy loss, but you'll note that, as I mentioned before, that the recoveries are greater than the operating expenses, and the non-recoverables are less than what we allow. So I think in the long run, it just washes out. So what I've done is utilizing the $80,697 NOI. I've utilized a cap rate of 6.475, and I get that from our page 6, our cap rates. So you'll note the 20th and 80th percentile cap rates are between 5.55 and 7.45. I'm going right down to the middle. It is an investment property, so just down the middle, it's basically 6.5. I'm just slightly over that, or sorry, the middle is 6.475. So that's what I am utilizing for cap rate. And if I utilize the actual income and that cap rate, I come up with a value of $1,246,000.
Excuse me, this is your recommendation.
That is my recommendation. And then in my appendix, you'll note that there's reports from external industry reports from Colliers and CBRE. You'll note that both are indicating that vacancy has been stable. The industrial market remains robust in Q1 2021. Total leasable area has seen a positive absorption rate. Rents have increased, cap rates have tended lower from Q4 2020 to Q1 2021, and that there's been virtually no impact from the pandemic. So given the strong state of the Winnipeg industrial market over the last number of years and strong forecasts for the foreseeable future, the income that this property generates, I believe that the assessed value of $1,246,000 to be fair and equitable, and I respectfully ask that the board confirm this value. And I open the questions.
And then thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
I have a few, yes, and thank you, Mr. Duxbury, but obviously I'd like to proceed with our appeal here.
Okay.
Can you just reiterate the NOI that you've adjusted to?
Yes, the NOI that I'm realizing is the actual NOI of $80,697.21.
Okay, so you've increased the NOI by over $10,000, but then you increased the cap rate
Correct.
by over 120 basis points. Okay, so coming in, we've already had a cap rate, but now we're talking about the cap and NOI.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. Now, I heard you mention something about recoveries being higher. You're aware, though, of course, that when an owner charges tenants recoveries, and there's a delta between the actual costs, that those are credited back. Of course,
I haven't seen any credits back in this, and I assume they were charged because the rent roll. If you look at the rent roll, the tenants have been there long term, so I assume that this rent has been in place, and I don't see any give back of those over excess charges. Yeah.
But you do understand that.
Yes, I have seen them before, but in this case, I don't see any.
Okay, just so we're very clear that we have an institutional owner, right? It's a REIT.
Yes,
They're not
yeah.
profiting from the recoveries that they're collecting from the town.
Well, they are charging their management fees on all their operating costs, their taxes, so
Okay, so we'll talk about, I suppose now we're talking about the, well, let's just go through this very quickly because cap rate is going to be an issue. Now, I heard you say a couple of things I just want to clear off the top. You mentioned that this is an investment grade property based on the fact that it's owned by a REIT, correct?
Correct, yes.
But that doesn't, the fact that it's owned by a REIT doesn't inherently make it an investment grade property. If somebody else owned it, let me ask you this, if somebody else owned this property, would you consider it investment grade?
Well, I think so. There's a rent that's in place, there's income in place, and the income that's being commanded by the property is a good market rent.
So typically what we would consider properties would be question you, or this property is indeed 55 years
Well,
old.
there's class A and class B according to other industry players, but in our case, as the city of Winnipeg, we don't classify A and B, so this is an investment property in our eyes.
Okay, that's fine. We can, and now we can agree though that the wall heights are 16 feet, so typically the clear height would be 14 feet. Typically the clear heights are lower than the wall heights.
Yes.
Okay, and that would be very low by today's industrial standards. Right?
Yes, but yeah,
Okay, and then M1 zoning of the three, that would be the least permissive in terms of use. Can we agree on that?
yes.
Okay, and then land to building, let's say for a property of in the 60s, 70s in Winnipeg, standard would be somewhere in that 4:1. Is that fair?
No, it depends on the zoning also. So if you look at my page 34, I have some definitions of what the zoning districts are. So M1 does not require a lot of outside space. Most of the operations are contained within the building. There's some limited outside storage. So
Right, but okay, just to reiterate my question though, M1 versus M2 or M3 would be the least permissive in terms of use.
yes.
Okay. Now, have you ever? I didn't have a chance to inspect the interior for this cycle, but I was able to go past it. Have you been outside this property? Have you had a look?
I used to live in St. James, so I'm
Great.
sort of familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay, so can we agree that there are what we'll call the loading capability in this property would not be considered typical of today's industrial stock? It's mostly very small garage doors, and there's a very
Yeah, it's not a loading facility.
and that would be considered a negative in your eyes, the market.
And it depends on your use. I would say.
Okay, fair enough. Now in terms of the cap rate, so the model, so okay, just so we're clear, I think we've established this, but just so I'm clear, the page 4, the initial assessment that was generated is all model derived, and
Yes.
you've adjusted it by hand on the cap
Yes,
rate.
I felt that cap rate was too aggressive for the type of building.
So let's talk about cap rates very quickly. You mentioned that there's no bifurcation in terms of quality, but neither is there a bifurcation in terms of single tenant, multi-tenant. It's just simply suggesting that the cap rate range ought to fall between 5.5 and 7.
That's where we see our cap rates fall. Most of them are between the 20th and 80th percentile.
Okay.
And you'll note if you look at the other industry players, we have a wider range and they have a tighter range. So
Right, you have a much wider range.
yes.
Okay. Do you have any sales to support those caps?
I did not include our cap rate study.
Okay, has there been any sales included in this cycle for either the panel or the owners?
No.
No. Okay. So there's also something that I noticed here on the second paragraph. You're talking about you're using model generated cap rates, and there's some time adjustment and acceleration. So none of that data is transparent.
Correct, but I'll just say for our department and industrial department, our cap rates are derived by actual sales with actual income. This has been generalized for all the other departments, but for industrial, because I've seen people work on the cap rates, this is how cap rates in industrial are done.
So
they're actual sales with actual income and
Okay.
actual expenses.
So industrial is different from the other. And this is just sort of what's called a bolted on piece. It's not every city.
I would say so, yes, because I have seen how cap rates are done in my department.
And does this piece about the IAAO standard on ratio studies apply to the separate work that you're doing in industrial?
Well, that would be a generalization. So yes, the whole department as a whole would follow.
Okay, and
Yeah.
are any of those, so I've heard the question asked before, but that statement, is that verified by anyone outside of the city, or is it simply the city suggesting that their own work satisfies the?
I'm not sure if it has been.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so that's fine. I think those are next questions. Oh, I guess I should just ask very quickly. Some of these questions I'll just ask to carry forward to the balance of the properties on our docket. But this supplemental questionnaire, I've seen this included sometimes. Now, the purpose of asking for this information from owners, what was the purpose for this?
Well, the purpose is to see if there's been any change in operating expenses or income due to COVID.
Okay, and if they indeed said there was a significant impact, how would that affect the way that
Well, this was a study that we were just conducting, so we did not apply any of their answers to any of our calculations.
And did you suggest to the owners what the purpose of this would be or how it would be used?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but I do see that there's sort of a vaguely threatening statement under certification that if they didn't submit it, then there may be penalties applied. So I guess my question is just as a general one for this cycle. If you ask owners to provide this information, and I have seen many forms where they said, no, there was substantial impact, but I'm just interested, did the city consider that?
No, per the act, we are allowed to ask questions or have the owners fill out forms.
Right.
And if they're not submitted, there are penalties.
I understand that, but then you've submitted it here and you made the comment that there was no impact on the industrial sector through COVID. Is that an opinion or is that a statement?
No, actually, if you look at the external reports, they indicate the same thing. So Collier's on page. Okay, so Collier's on page 23.
Yeah.
The top paragraph there, the last few lines or the last line. Demand for warehouse space and user industrial building continues despite the pandemic as a result of the diverse economy.
Okay, but that's not the same as there's been no impact.
And then on page 25, the second bullet there.
Yeah.
Transaction volume has for industrial has returned to pre-pandemic levels.
Right.
And then,
That would imply that there was a disruption during the pandemic, would it not? If it's returned to pre-pandemic levels.
I'm not sure.
Okay, and I just want to ask you quickly about this these reports. We are going to be looking at a number of older.
Sorry,
Yeah.
there's one more.
Yeah.
Since you asked, so on page 30, Cushman and Wakefield.
Yeah.
Again, they're also saying the last paragraph line in paragraph 1.
Start to focus on post-pandemic realities and space requirements.
Yeah.
Okay. So right, and so just.
Sorry, I'm my glasses.
Okay. So page 19 though, I just want to go through some of these market reports because we can agree that these are best described as advertising, marketing materials.
Well, they say they're market reports, so and we rely on them. You guys have your own reports that you.
So we rely on them to gauge compression in the market, and I don't think we have much of a.
Let me just say, we don't rely on them on per se for what they're. We're just relying on them to see that our data sort of matches their data.
Okay, so just to be very clear though, because we have established that you have cap rates that aren't bifurcated by quality, single tenant, or whatever. These market reports that you've included typically are saying that the demand in the Winnipeg industrial universe is indeed for newer properties, the sort of latest conversions.
No, if you look at the Cushman report, which is the first paragraph there, the Winnipeg industrial market's run of strong performance has continued in Q1. This has been seen across the full cycle of industrial real estate, from raw land to building sales, with leasing being the shining star. So it's across the full range.
And is that the one where they talk about flight to quality?
I do not believe.
So it's page 30. Yeah, so it says.
Yes, at the bottom. Yes.
Right. Okay, and flight to quality as a concept means that owners have the ability to move to, let's call it, just for lack of a better term, better spaces at comparable rents. So I guess my question is, for the properties that we're dealing with today, can we agree that they're mostly older and they have some let's call it, they have some issues, whether it be low ceiling heights, low land to building, and age, to be certain.
No, well, okay, so I adjusted the cap rate for that, but
Yeah.
if you look at our rents, that we've utilized in my rent comparables, they fall right in line with what
So, but hold on, I just
application
understand.
is charging.
I want to stay on this question. It does show here, Colliers is saying that the demand is for modern industrial facilities. That's the second last paragraph on page 19, and you've highlighted it. Paragraph underneath that says increase in demand for new amenity-rich space of warehouse and fulfillment centers rather than traditional brick and mortar retail. So doesn't that support what I'm suggesting to you, that the market in industrial, the tailwinds, let's say, are for the new amenity-rich spaces, and that's certainly not what we're dealing with today.
The report states that, but what I'm saying is these little buildings are still bringing in customers. You're seeing that there is no vacancy in these little buildings. They're attracting market rent.
Okay, so to be clear, we are looking at a fee simple perspective and not a lease fee. So we're not looking at the economic picture simply at a moment in time. We're looking at, for example, so we're using market vacancy. We're both doing that. So we wouldn't use a 0% vacancy because it had no vacancy at April 1, 2021.
Yes,
correct?
yeah.
Okay. I think those are my questions, and thank you for that, Mr. But I think many of those questions regarding cap rates, we'll sort of bring them back up as they pertain to the files going forward. But I think many of those questions will also they continue forward to the balance of the brief, as many of the small overlap between these properties. And I think
Mr. Merritt, did you have any questions for the assessor?
Yes, Madam Chairperson. Arif, there is this property has a history of appeals.
Yes.
Okay, I thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
I do have some with respect to cap rates. I need some notes on that. Is the cap rate seemed, as initially presented, seemed a little low. That was a modeled cap rate.
That was a modeled cap rate, yes.
Okay. Just as the NOI that you originally had submitted was modeled
Yes.
calculation as well. Now, the cap rate that you have provided as an amended cap rate is 6.475.
Right.
Right. Now, I'm trying to reconcile mathematically. You said that was halfway between the 5.55 and the
Right,
7.45.
and I thought that would be best way to describe this, because this is a property that was purchased by an investment REIT. They purchased that a multi-role sale back in 2007. So I figure if I use the average of all the properties, it should fall in line, not too far from that.
Okay, two things out of that. First of all, I come up with a different value when I add the two of those 5.55 and 7.45 and divide by 2 by 5 basis points. But that's the 5 basis points is not going to make a huge amount of difference. Just mathematically, something that bothers me.
Well, 6.5.
Okay, I know. As I said, it's just and just following up on a question I think that Mr. Story asked, or an area that he was exploring, the ownership of a particular asset, in this case, an industrial warehouse, doesn't affect the cap rate.
No, it doesn't
Okay.
affect the cap rate. I'm just saying that this is a investment building because it was purchased by an investment trust. And they are in the business of purchasing investment buildings so they can distribute their profits to unit holders. So they are in the business, and I believe because of that, this is an investment building.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you. Arif, I just have one question in regards to that sale in 2007. I'm assuming that's when the REIT purchased.
Yes, they purchased a basket of properties. So this was one.
Okay. And you have submitted, I'm just going to reiterate this, no sales to support your cap rate, correct?
No, we have not included our cap rate study.
And you have not inspected the building,
I've driven by it, but not, no.
right? Do you know when it was last inspected?
Usually a building would be inspected when it's permits taken out, but so I mean,
Which, given that this is an effective age of actual uneffective of 67, I'm assuming that there's been no permits.
we used to get permits when there was new occupancies, and then an FA would go out. It looks like November 6, 2020, it was a new occupancy permit.
And so somebody,
But no, they wouldn't have gone out because
COVID. Yes. All right. I thank you.
But the notes do say they have confirmed with the Alexis. I guess they spoke with somebody. They confirmed, yeah.
All right. I thank you. That's all my questions. Mr. Stern, if you would like to proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so 530 Berry, I think we've established we have an older, we call this an industrial flex warehouse in St. James. It was indeed built in 1967. The plan area is 10,620 square feet with a leasable area of 10,620 square feet. So there's no basement. There are 17 parking stalls on site, and we are requesting a value today of $1,058,000. I mentioned briefly in my questions to the assessor. I asked about the loading. You can see very clearly here. The loading is atypical. There's small garage doors, and the rear loading is accessible only through this very tight back lane. Trucks, I suppose, were much smaller in the 1960s than they are today. So ultimately, we've used the actual income in place to come to our value. We've looked at the leases. Sorry, I should point out that land to building ratio is quite low at 1.96 to 1. Typically 4 to 1 would be standard in industrial land. Okay, so page 12 has the actual leases as of the reference date. We've established it is professionally managed and owned. So we do believe that the contract rents at the reference date are appropriate. So the initial model had used $7.56. We are using the actuals of $8.30. In terms of vacancy, we're using 7%. I don't believe that's in dispute. Shortfall, I don't think that's in dispute for any of the properties on our docket today at $3.85. Now, the non-recoverable expenses, I know that the city has not submitted anything to support their position. We typically would apply 2% for a structural reserve and then 5% for a non-recoverable. Now, you've all been provided with the Altus non-recoverable expense study. I will just go over the highlights, and then again, I'll ask that this apply to all the properties on our docket. So the main issue here is to, I know you've all read this before, but non-recoverable costs are simply costs that are never recovered by the owner of a property in the competent management of an income producing property. It's not the management fee. Now there's a management fee on the books here, and that's separate and apart from what we're talking about. I want to make sure we're not conflating that. This is a stabilized expense ratio that again represents expenses that are not recovered by the owner under any circumstance. Now, as you all know, prior to the previous cycle, the assessor used the same methodology, and they rightly pointed out, quoting from their 1988 city manual, even with net leases and competent management, there will still be expenses incurred by the landlord that are non-recoverable from the tenants. Example of these are processing payments and chasing bad debts. They also note that the net operating income equates to the potential annual net rent, less vacancy loss, plus other income, less non-recoverable operating expenses. So this is, we believe that that is appropriate, and that we didn't disagree with that, and that's rooted in appraisal valuation theory. The appraisal course materials state that the appraiser should account for non-recoverable or non-rechargeable expenses. And they do note that the most important non-recoverable cost items are space marketing costs, which include inducements and leasing. And again, there should be some consideration for structural repairs, particularly when we look at some of these older buildings. Our submission talks about other jurisdictions in Canada which support our position. This is there's not for example, a jurisdictional exemption in Manitoba where we ought not to include these charges. And then finally, we have included a study for you to see. So we've looked at a number of properties, sampling for the years 2018 through 2020. And we've paid consideration to leasing commissions, professional fees, asset management fees, and space advertising and marketing costs. So we don't include TIs, just to be very clear. There are multiple board orders that say that we ought not to. And so we don't include them in our valuation, but for the purpose of the study, just to give you the mathematics of it, when we exclude TIs, the average is 6.64 and the median is 5.98. When we include them, it's much higher. It's 10.66 as an average and a median of 8.6. So these results are very, very similar to the exercise that we completed for the same purpose in the previous cycle. And we do submit that our piece here on non-recoverables does fully support the 5% of the EGI. And then the other portion to talk about is if you do, for any reason, choose to not reinstate the 5% non-recoverable, that will have an effect on the cap rate. So I believe for all of the properties that we're dealing with today, I've provided something that I'll call the alternate calculation. It's typically on the last page. And basically, when you remove the non-recoverables from our cap rate, from our conclusions, it has the net effect of adjusting the cap rate by 25 to 35 basis points. So we simply ask if for any reason you don't believe that the 5% ought to be included and simply the 2% structural is included, then we will suggest that the cap rate ought to be adjusted upward by 25 basis points. Now, just to be very clear about the non-recoverables, these are charges that are not going to show up on every balance sheet. For example, leasing commissions may only show up at the end of, obviously, the end of the expiration of a certain lease. So we've not looked at a year-by-year basis, but rather looked at the effective useful life of the property and tried to even out and stabilize the non-recoverables. So that is our piece on non-recoverables. We have included the 5% non-recoverable and 2% structural in all of our briefs here today. And you have the supporting documentation that discusses our rationale. Okay, so back to Berry Street. In terms of the capitalization rate, and again, we've provided you with our full capitalization rate study. I don't think vacancy is going to be in dispute for any of the properties today. So I'll limit my comments to the actual cap rate conclusions that we've come to. So effectively, I was questioning the assessor on the marketing material that's put out by the brokerage firms. But we looked at that data as well to track compression. We also include sales. So we have a number of sales in our cap rate study. And we've also analyzed the compression as reported by the brokers. And effectively, what we've seen is that there is compression of about 25 to 50 basis points for Class A industrial properties. Class B properties should be around 50 basis points.
Excuse me, Mr. Story, it's your page.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is page 17 of my Altus Group 2023 capitalization rate study for industrial properties. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me know when I'm good to proceed. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so you see our sales. We have cap rates ranging from, let's see here, 6.5 to 9.16. Now, these are not meant to be specific to any property, but it does show that the range is that we're suggesting is reasonable, and it is in line indeed with the brokers. And I suppose on some level it's also it's in line with the general range that the city is suggesting, but we have bifurcated by Class A and Class B. Again, Class B should have a 50 basis point adjustment for higher quality assets and 0 to 25 for the lower quality assets. And we have not seen any compression, what we're calling non-investment grade, or what it's sometimes called under demolished older stock industrial properties in the city of Winnipeg. So those are typically applied a cap rate of about 8%. We don't see we tend to see that from the city as well. We see the obviously the lower quality properties have a higher cap rate, and Class A and B. A is typically between 6 and 6.5. 6 being the latest and greatest, high ceiling heights, access to trade routes, amenity rich spaces as the brokers are suggesting. Class B again is more of the user grade. Most of Winnipeg is going to fall into that Class B between 6.5 and 7.5. So in terms of Barrie, based on the fact that it is a 55-year-old industrial property, based on the fact that it does have potentially a limited use in terms of usership as an M1 zone property with a low land to building, with some issues regarding loading, we have applied a cap rate of 7%. So that falls right in the middle of our Class B study. So I'm very comfortable with that. And the resulting value ultimately comes to, as I mentioned, $1,058,000, which calculates to $98.69 per square foot. I will suggest that $126 per the other model per square foot is very high. And even that 117 suggested by the assessor is still a little higher than what we would be comfortable with for a property of this vintage. So ultimately, we're suggesting that the property not be, the assessment not exceed $1,058,000 based on our submission. And with that, I'm open to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Desmond, please.
Yes, first of all, I think my workup does not look like your workup. In my workup that you provided in evidence, I have a management and other of 3%.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3% as opposed to 5, or as opposed to.
I think you were saying 7%.
We're using 7%. Yeah.
Okay, but in this workup, is this the same workup you provided?
So it's in my main brief, yeah. Management / other 7%.
And the value is different and the cap rate is different.
No, that doesn't. It's bizarre. No, that's does your brief say 1,057,923?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what mine says. I'm not sure what yours. That's what mine says on both.
Wait.
So I don't want to.
That's a new one.
Oh. Okay, so
You want to see mine? See my work.
I had questions. Okay, well. You found the number?
1996. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Oh, sorry. You know what? Are you on the very last page?
yes.
Okay, so okay, solved it. The very last page, as I mentioned, is that what I'm calling that alternate calculation. If you look in the very uppermost left.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So basically, I'm suggesting to the panel that if they do remove the full of expenses,
All right.
then the non, yes.
Okay. All right. So
Enough of that. Problem with technology this morning that
Yes.
things out of that. It's nothing to announce. Okay.
okay, so you're using a higher net rent per square foot than what is actual?
We're using the actuals as recorded here on page 12. So the rents in this building range between $750 and $925. We have the tenants, we have the leased area. So the market rent per annum is $88,963 over $10,720. That calculates to $8.30. So we're higher than the model, but I think when you made the change coming in, I think now you are actually
if you look at page 13 of my brief, the rents are actually, the actual rents are actually $750 to $8. So it's highlighted in that red box. So what you're looking at is they've added the management fee to that rent.
Sorry, we're looking at the actual hold on, let's just have a look and see, we're using the actual rents. Yeah, no, I'm not sure where you're seeing that word.
Okay, so
You look at the actual rent roll, yeah,
Okay, so the rent roll is that is the charge for the basic rent. And then they add management fee
it's,
and then tax and then the total, and then they get,
no, they're showing us that the base rent is $8.95.
look here.
Yeah, count. It's 14.15, yeah.
I know, but if you look at these rents here, this is the actual charge rent.
These are steps.
Yeah, but if you, okay, let's do this. Actually, if you just divide that by the square footage, you'll see what the actual net rent is. If you divide the rental income divided by square footage, let's say $7.51 per square foot.
Okay, well, I guess.
So you're a little higher.
I'm going off the rent roll. That's the face rent.
Okay, but as I mentioned before, they're charging a 5% management fee on all of the numbers there. So, and they're charging tax on there. So, but if you just take the charge, the actual charge.
We're using the net rent, right?
Yeah, so the net rent is right here.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, so if you divide that
Yeah,
by the square footage, it works out to $7.51.
and if
So
you take the total amount as recorded, and you get annual amount per area, that's your net rent. Right, and I think I mentioned here that, I think you're trying to say that the
that's gross
non-reciprocals.
rent. So you're going to gross rent.
No.
Okay, well,
We're going to the
and
net market rent. And then the other thing that I've mentioned here in my submission, I think I see where you're going. We're not double counting. I think that's what you're going to say. We're double counting in management because it's included in the base rent.
yes, they are.
Yes, and again, the management fee is separate and apart from the non-recoverables. That's our position. I think you know that.
Okay, but let's just figure this out. So are you saying the step ups are less than the actual right now?
No, what I'm suggesting to you is if you were analyzing this property, you go by the inputs on the rent
Right.
roll, right? And it's very simple. There's your net rent. That's $8.95. Then they have cam and tax, right?
Okay, but what
That's
I'm
the rent.
saying, the rent here works out to $7.51.
Okay,
And that's what they're charging for their rents.
Okay, so
So
you'd like me to use a lower?
no, well, what I'm saying is why are you not using, but.
We're using the actuals as reported.
Okay, so, okay, we'll just move on. And then in regards to, your, management fee and others, of 7%.
Yes,
So you've calculated that using your study
yes,
and you've utilized that using, I guess, your client's income and expense, what they've submitted to.
yes, yeah, we've gone through a number of statements.
All right,
submitted.
and
Hold
would
on,
you
one
say,
second.
oh, sorry.
Your question, between 18 and 20, we've looked to the market because this is an issue that's come before the board a number of times. We want to make sure that our position is correct, even though it is a position that we all typically agreed on in the past and that other assessing authorities agree to, but we wanted to make sure that we were absolutely transparent. So we've provided the study. And as I mentioned, what we found is that when we include, well, I'm not going to talk about TIs, but our study does conclude that our 5% as a percentage of the EGI is absolutely supported by what we're seeing. I think that we have to be very careful to say, well, in 1 year there's no tenant or there's no leasing commissions, for example, but then in another year it's extremely high. So we wouldn't use the actual expenses in a single year because you'd end up with an assessment that looks like a roller coaster. So we've stabilized it over the effective economic life of the property, and that's supported by our study. We haven't seen anything from the city to support why it was 2 and now it's 3. And I think we can all agree that typically market practice would dictate that 2% of the minimum would be dedicated to structural, right?
And would you agree that the city of Winnipeg has more income and expense mailers submitted to them than you would have?
Yeah, of course.
And would you agree that prior to 2020, in your briefs and in the city's briefs, there was a line item that said 5% management and 2% other?
Yes, and it was not in debate at that
Okay.
stage.
And since then, the city has removed the management fee. Is that correct?
They've removed what they're calling management, but as I mentioned, in past manuals, the methodology that they're using, they talk about non-recoverable expenses, and that's commensurate with the appraisal literature as well. So, and I appreciate the comment that you have more income and expense mailers, but in terms of what we see here today, we don't have anything supporting the city's position.
And would you agree that the subject, the owner currently charges 5% management fee?
Correct, but again, I want to be very, very clear that we're not conflating management fees with non-recoverables. Those are separate and apart.
Okay, and then in regards to your cap rate study,
Yes.
on page 13.
The cap rate study?
No, sorry, on
Oh,
your
my
brief,
brief,
yeah.
yeah.
So are you aware that 100 McPhillips, 110 Sutherland, and 58 Hutchings, I didn't get the chance to look at the other ones, not Hutchings, 121 Sherwin.
1221 Sherwin?
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
1221. So 100 McPhillips, 110 Sutherland, and 1221 Sherwin were owner occupied before the sale.
Okay, so let's go through them. 100 McPhillips, I did this one myself, so I know we can go through the methodology now. What's interesting is, I guess you said that the city for industrial doesn't use estimated NOIs or whatever, but again, we haven't seen anything, but I'll tell you what we did. 100 McPhillips came on the market and sold in late September of 2020. It sold from one user to the other. However, it was marketed. We have this here. We have the sheet from Allison Young. They're suggesting that it was offered at $2,750,000, and they suggested that the net market rent was $7.50. Typically, asking rents in our experience are about, call it 10 or 15% higher than what is achieved. So with that in mind, we used $675. Vacancy at 4%, typically not in dispute. 3.75, which is commensurate with last cycle shortfall, of course, 3.85 today, and the 5 non-recoverable expenses, 2 for structural. When we take that value, now again, it's sold for a fair bit below the ask, right? They were asking $2,750,000, and it sold for $2,100,000. So when we take that NOI, we've calculated using fairly, I'm going to say, quite reasonable parameters. That cap rate calculates to 9.16%, regardless of whether it's sold to an investor or a user. It was market tested, and this was the result. Now, what was the other one that you were asking about?
110 Sutherland.
Okay, 110 Sutherland. Let's see here. So we have and of course we have all the backup documents in our separate. 110 Sutherland. Some reason I don't see the work up in 110 Sutherland. I think we actually removed that. That was the one that went from the change of use from it was a bus depot and then sold to a fellow who is storing tires. But I don't have that in this updated version. We'll remove that. But that's that's a property that has some issues. So the fact that it's getting up there at 8% doesn't give me any pause.
And 1221 Sherwin.
Right. Okay. 1221 Sherwin. There was a lease in place. It was signed in 2007. This was the lease in place was the final of the third step between years 11 and 15, and it was at 575. Again, we've inputted 4% vacancy, shortfall $3.75, non-recoverables and structural at 5 and 2. And when we take the actual sales price of 4.2 million, it calculates to 6.81. And we did look to the market to see what the comparable leases would be, and we have that included on page 23. So again, I'm comfortable with that as well.
So you did not use actual NOI, you use parameters again?
We use parameters, yeah, and that's a fully reasonable way to determine the NOI of a property. So yes, we did.
And 15 Hutchings, was that owner occupied prior to?
Hutchings, well, 58 Hutchings was vacant possession of March 1st, 2020. The asking rent was $775,000. They were asking for $6,495,000. It sold for $5,950,000. So we used the actual asking rent of $7.75. So we could do something slightly lower, but we recognize that it has it's a property with good exposure. It was marketed through a broker. It was vacant at the time of purchase, but not for very long. So we used the actual $7.75. We've got some rent comps that show averages and medians between 760 and 786. So that makes sense. And that calculates to 6.5%. Now, the other sort of interesting issue is when we look at the price per square foot, they do range somewhere between about, call it $60 a square foot to about $103. So that makes sense. So when I see, for example, on Barrie, that the model suggests $126 per square foot, we can see that something is off.
Also, you would agree that the formula for cap rate is income over actual, sales price over actual income. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then one more thing with the cap rate. So 160 Eagle and 50 Hutchings, the land to plan ratio there is currently, as stated in your study, there is less than the subject. Is that correct, John?
Well, they're pretty much, well, I mean, the subject's at 1.96. Well, yeah, these are low for sure.
All right. I do have rebuttal.
Okay, we'll go through all the questions and then go to rebuttal.
Okay, and I believe those are all my questions. Thank you.
And thank you. Mr. Merritt?
I have none, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Knight?
I do have a couple of questions, looking at page 13 of your report, which is, I guess, kind of reproduced at page 17 of the CAP study.
Yes.
The items or the properties that are listed are all significantly larger than the properties that are today.
Absolutely.
And you were talking about the price per square foot, the $98.69 per square foot from the valuation as proposed by Altus versus the $126 per square foot in the valuation as proposed by the city. But the smaller, would I be correct in saying that just smaller properties for reverse economies of scale will go for more per square foot than the other?
Typically. So just to follow up with that, will be, so the smallest one we have obviously is on McPhillips. It's 32,000 square feet, right, and it's in at $64 per foot. I'm still suggesting just a touch below $100 per square foot. So yes, you are correct, but I think that our valuation supports what we'll call just the general concept of economies of scale. Yeah.
I see that this is a 1967 build. The pictures from my uneducated eye do not seem to. I'll stop that. I'm not going to give any evidence. Has there been any renovations of which you're aware since 1967 to this property?
I'm sure there would be. I don't think we're not suggesting that if it were completely true to its vintage, you'd see a cap rate of 8% or higher. But the more important factor here is the bones, the actual infrastructure of this property, the foundation, building envelope, for example, and then some of the what we'll call functional obsolescences. So the loading, you would never see a property built today with that style of loading. So that's there's a useful economic life for a property. Masonry obviously is better than wood frame, to be certain. But as a property ages, there are going to be costs associated with that property, and there also will be obsolescences. So loading, for example, in this scenario would be a consideration. And I do note that we haven't made any upward adjustment. We're simply suggesting that it would be like a middle grade property of its vintage. It's leased out, it's professionally managed. We're not making any adjustment for conditions. So I would assume that it's been kept to obviously a leasable and reasonable standard.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
And my questions have been asked and answered. So thank you. And you have rebuttal?
Yeah, I did have a rebuttal for cap rates. The only thing is it's on my computer, so I don't have a printed out copy, but you guys have all a copy of the rebuttal.
I do.
We do.
I sent it to your email.
It hasn't shown up in my.
No, I do
Here
not
it
have
is,
it on
says
my
yet.
docket.
I'm asking if someone received it.
I just sent it before I left this morning to come down.
Okay, so that was a separate one. Okay. Oh, okay.
So would you like to take the minutes?
I think we're gonna have to do that.
Okay. And I would like to call this meeting back to order. And Mr. Gus Mohammed, I believe you have rebuttal for us.
Yes, so my rebuttal, the point I was trying to get across was the formula for cap rates is sales price over the income, reported income, and you can see by the rebuttal that 100 McPhillips, 110 Sutherland, and 1221 Sherwood were all three of them were owner occupied at the time of sale. I did not investigate 160 Eagle and 50 Hutchings. I accept those reported cap rates. I think Mr. Story mentioned that they're not utilizing or they're not putting weight on 110 Sutherland. So, but that was the point I was trying to get across. I'll be open to questions.
Sure. Just very quickly. So I think we spoke to our methodology. We've been very transparent in how we've determined the NOI. Now, but I just want to point out, we talked about this piece, and it says that the city determines cap rates by estimating net operating incomes, deriving model generated estimates, net operating incomes, and then some time adjustments. So in terms of how we derive the cap rates from McPhillips, I think we showed you exactly, well, we know the sales price. We know what was put to market in terms of the potential net market income. And we don't typically disagree on the other inputs, save for the non-recoverables. And if we remove it, that would have the effect of adjusting that cap rate upward, which I'm sure you wouldn't agree with. So if you're agreeing to Eagle and Sherwin, that's a range of 7.05 to 7.42. I think what we've submitted here is supported by the brokers. And I understand that you're suggesting that you have sales, but you haven't submitted any here. So I guess all this to say that we don't believe that estimating net operating income is an appropriate way of imputing a cap rate. So I think we've kind of covered this solely by my comments today.
I thank you. Mr. Merritt, did you have any questions regarding the rebuttal?
I have none, Madam Chairperson.
And Mr. Young?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
I also have no questions. Do either of you have a wish for estimation on this property?
I'm good thinking.
No, I think we've covered this.
All right, then we will move on to a second property on the docket, item number 4, 1326 Border Street. And there are no preliminary issues regarding this property.
I do not believe so. Just quantum.
If you would like to proceed.
Okay, Board Revision file number 22-1123, roll number 0701018500, Address is 1326 Border Street. Again, this is a artist Winnipeg property. Roll year is 2023, reference date is April 1st, 2021. Assessed value is $1,444,000. It's an industrial warehouse building, one building, two premises, one story, built in 1968. The effective age is also 1968. Wall height is 18 feet. It's zoned to manufacturer general. Land area is 26,524 square feet. Plan area is 15,000 square feet. Leasable area is 14,912 square feet. Land to plan area is 1.77 to 1. If you turn to my page 9, there is the map of the subject property. It's located in the northwest quadrant of the city. It's again in St. James Industrial. Subject parcel boundaries are below that, and then the overhead view on page 9. Same with page 10 and the top of page 11, and then the street views on page 11 at the bottom. So that's the view from Border Street. On page 12, the street view from Powell Avenue. And then on page 12, there's a little driveway that goes to the back of the building. So there is some loading docks at the back. And you can see that more clearly on the page 9 overhead view. Anyway, so on page 13 is the building section. So again, it's one building at 15,000 square feet and a wall height of 18 feet. On page 14 is the income and expense mailer that was submitted. So this income and expense mailer, they've included 2 properties on it. So the subject property and another property that's right beside it. So all I can point out here is you'll note that management recovery is at 7.54%. They're expensing it out at 6.06%. And the owner's expenses come out to 2.6%. On page 15 is the tenant roll. So you'll notice that these are renting it out at $6.50 per square feet. Or yeah. So going back to my comparables on page 3. So those are like the subject, all comparables are industrial warehouse properties that are located in the St. James industrial market region. All leases are current in relation to the reference date. Effective year build ranges from 1956 to 1975. Average wall heights range from 16 feet to 18 feet. Leasable areas range from 11,000 square feet to 15,000 square feet, and net rents range from $6.50 per square foot to $9.35 per square foot. So again, you'll notice that the effective year is in line with the subject property, and the rents are somewhat higher than the subject property. On page 4 is my workup. Again, I redid this workup. So what I did here was I utilized the actual rent of $6.50 per square foot, and that gave me a gross potential rent of $96,928. I'm utilizing 7% for vacancy. I'm utilizing 3% for non-recoverables, $3.85 per square foot for shortfall. That gives me a net operating income of $83,420. And this time, if I've done the correct calculation, again, I went halfway between our 20th and 80th percentile. Now I'm using a 6.5% cap rate. And that gives me a overall assessed value of $1,283,000. And that is my recommendation on this property. So again, given the strong state of the Winnipeg industrial market over the last number of years, for the foreseeable future, the income that the property generates, I believe that the assessed value of $1,283,000 to be fair and equitable, and I respectfully ask that the board confirm that value. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Story is going to ask, did you want to accept this recommendation?
No, I thank you, but I would like to proceed. Just on it, and I'll be brief because we're not miles apart here, but I would like to proceed.
Proceed with questions then?
Thank you very much. Mr. Strauss Mohammed, have you ever visited this building?
No, I've driven by it.
Okay. We can agree though that it is an older building. It's my comments from the previous building will carry forward. It's very similar to the previous. It's got low ceiling heights. It's got low land to building, and it's certainly of an older vintage for the current Winnipeg stock. Do you agree with me?
Yes, St. James Industrial is good. Very.
And I think I heard you say, and I didn't get this in the previous one, but I just want to talk about it briefly because it may come up again. Page 2, you're talking about a portfolio sale.
Correct, yes.
Okay, but the IAAO precludes you from using portfolio sales. And I think it also precludes you from using large acquisition by REITs.
Yeah, we didn't put any weight on that sale. We just was showing the history of the sales.
Okay, but I thought I heard you say that you used sort of a blended cap rate based on. No. Okay, just to be very, very clear. So we're not considering that sale.
It's a multi-level stuff.
Okay, and that rent, that's a net rent of $650 as reported?
Yes.
Okay, and that's reported in exactly the same way that we were discussing.
No, or yes, sorry, it is.
Yes, okay, good. And I'm not gonna leave those rent funds, so that's fine. Using the actual, but my question here is page 4. Now we can clearly see it. You looked at the rent roll, and I appreciate that. They are suggesting that the leasable area is 14,825, correct?
Yes.
So where does that 87 square feet come from?
I am not sure where that comes from.
Okay, does that affect the model in any way if there's more than, I presume that, I mean, obviously, since you've made a correction or an adjustment.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's mezzanine space or storage. I just don't know where that comes from.
Okay, so okay, that's fine. Now the cap rate you've adjusted, so okay, that's fine. I suppose I'll leave that. Now, one thing that I did notice, and I know we're not talking about assessment history, but just to be clear, some of these assessments in the history, these are from different firms, correct?
I don't have the history of who was the agent.
I can tell you for certain that in 2018 I was the agent. It was the difference. So these aren't. I just want to not prejudicing the board with.
Yes, we're not speaking.
Okay,
So they're not holding any weight for us.
thank you. Perfect. Now, let's see here. Well, okay. So just very quickly on your table, you're using the midpoint of 5.5 to 7.45, but this shows the 20th and 80th percent. Can you tell us what is the full range?
I don't have that info. I'm
okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of, can we agree at a minimum that this would be considered an industrial B, based on its age, based on some of the specific factors?
Again, we don't separate A and B, so I guess the players in the industry might consider this as a B, but like
right.
We don't.
And a B, a big part of this would be the age, correct? And this would, I think we agreed that this would be a fairly old property that's still functioning in this market, correct? 68 is pretty old for an industrial building. There's a lot of 70s.
I've seen industrial buildings in the exchange from
the 20th century, sure. Okay, that's fine. I think I'll leave the balance of my comments for my presentation. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt, any questions? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Arif, just like the previous case, there's a history in regards to appeals.
Yes.
Okay. And, I've looked at both briefs. I just want to make a couple comments, and that is that the NOIs prior to your adjustment for cap and were exactly the same. We're close to the same. It was just a matter, it boiled down to cap rate. So,
Yes, yeah.
So, I guess my question is, you're supposed to be, I guess, defending the position that you are in your exchanges. So I guess it's at your liberty to adjust the NOI and adjust the cap rate. Is that your thinking?
Am I at liberty to, sorry, I missed the question.
Yeah, I just wonder why you presented your brief beforehand. You had a cap rate of 5.45. So why do you adjust it now rather than prior?
Because just over the last few days, Mr. Story and I have been going through these properties, and I've just been taking a closer look. So I utilize the rent of $650 because it is owned by a REIT, and I'm sure they have access to market rents. So I just utilize their market rent.
Okay.
And it's pretty close to our comparables also.
Yeah. Okay. I thank you, Madam Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
I also have no questions. Thank you. If you would like to proceed, Mr. Story.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I will try and be brief here, but we're, of course, at 1326 border. As I mentioned, the property is a little bit older. It's from 1968. It has a leasable area of 14,825 as reported, leading to a very low land to building ratio as we've established. So ultimately, we've used the income in place. I don't think there's any dispute about that at this stage. It is indeed 650 at the reference date. That's starting in December of 19, and I think we're on the same page with that, even though the model had initially kicked out a rent that was below that. So that's fine. Vacancy, we're using 7%. I don't believe that is in dispute. Shortfall is similarly, we're using the same figure at $3.85. Of course, I will ask that my comments regarding non-recoverable expenses carry forward to this file as well. So we do continue to apply 5% as a stabilized allowance for non-recoverable expenses arising in the competent management and operation of the property, with 2% dedicated to structural reserve. You've heard our piece on cap rates, and ultimately, Mr. Merritt was right in pointing out that ultimately the NOI was almost identical. It was very, very, very close. So this, in my mind, is more of a cap rate issue than anything. And as I pointed out, we would consider this to be a Class B building. We've not made any adjustments for quality or anything of that nature, but we do recognize that it's older. It has perhaps less of a remaining useful economic life. There will be likely more expenses as time marches on for an older building. And so I think we've been very reasonable in applying 7%, which falls directly in the middle of our 7.5%. So when we take our NOI of 79,349, which of course was higher than the model, and capitalize with 7%, we come to an indicated market value at the reference date of $1,133,551, which we then round to $1,134,000. So we do respectfully submit that the value at the reference date not exceed $1,134,000. With that, I'm open to your questions.
I thank you. Mr. Delsel, how many questions?
Yeah, my questions will just apply from the previous in regards to non-recoverables and capitalization rates. So I'm just good for now.
All right, thank you. Mr. Merritt, questions?
None, thank you.
And Mr. Mann?
No, thank you.
Did you have a chance to inspect this property?
Not for this cycle, but I have been there a number of times. As I mentioned, I I handled the property for a different company and I guess 2 cycles ago. Yeah.
All right. Can you speak to the condition? Because the age keeps coming up on.
Right, so interior conditions, no real issues. It's more, again, the all the bones of the building. When we talk about these older properties, we're not adjusting upward, but it is. So we're not adding a premium to our cap rate or adding some other factor. We're simply suggesting that based on the age, based on the reasonably low clear heights of about 16 feet, based on the fact that the loading is not doesn't necessarily meet today's standards, it would be considered more functional or utility grade than a brand new property. If the brand new stock is coming in somewhere between 6.25, then 7% makes sense for a property that's over 50 years old. So no adjustments to condition. We're simply suggesting that it is a what we call a middle B, and that's how we've used the actual income, and then that 7%. I think that's all justified. No issues there. If it's a cap rate, 7% is well supported.
Okay. And you had a question to Mr. Das Mohammed concerning that small square footage.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that at all?
Don't worry. No idea. If it is a mezzanine, I know that there's something on the plan that is a little bit higher. Maybe that's where it came from, but I know that they're releasing it at it's 14. The speed. Yeah, I don't know where that loose 87 square feet came from. It's not totally out of the question that
No.
sometimes there's different. I just wanted to point it out. It's not. I mean, if there was more square footage, the owner would be.
Yes.
At least a little higher.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Do either of you have a wish for estimation on this property?
I'm good, thank you.
I think we're good. Thanks.
All right. And we will move on to item number 6 on our docket, 865 King Edward Street. And I believe there are no preliminary issues with this property, correct, Mr. Das Mohammed?
That's correct, yes.
If you would like to proceed.
Board revision file number 22-2138, roll number 07569013000. Address is 865 King Edward Street. Roll year is 2023. Reference date is April 1st, 2021. Assessed value is $1,821,000. Parcel use code is industrial warehouse. Number of buildings is 1. Number of premises is 2. Number of stories is 1. Actual year build ranges from 1957 to 2020. We're utilizing an effective age of 1979. Wall heights range from 14 feet to 17 feet. It's zone M2 manufacturing general. Land area is 28,848 square feet. Plan area is 15,846 square feet. Leasable area is 15,846 square feet also. Land to planet area is 1.82 to 1. On page 9 is the map of the subject area. So again, it's in the northwest quadrant of the city. It's located in St. James Industrial. At the bottom is the subject parcel boundaries. And then on page 9 is the aerial view. So you can see in 2018, there was no building at the end there on the right side. And then in 2021, there was a new building constructed in addition there. And I believe that was constructed in 2020. Again, on page 10, another aerial view of the subject property. Page 11 is the street view, and then at the bottom is just a graphic of the drawing. And then on page 12 is the floor areas and site plan. So main floor, you can see there's the offices in there. It looks like the new addition is it looks like warehouse space. Page 13 is a building section summary. So again, 2 sections. One with almost 10,000 square feet at 14 feet and the other at 6,000 square feet with 17 feet wide. On page 14 is the permit for the new construction, the addition there, and you can see that the permit was issued in 2019 and the declared construction value was $500,000 on that. Page 15 is the income and expense mailer. This is a owner occupied building. You'll note down at the bottom, there's been some capital costs and they're amortizing over a number of years. So HVAC and the roof. So going back to my page 3 of the main brief. You'll note that like the subject, all comparable properties are industrial storage warehouses, and they're all located in the St. James industrial market region. All leases are current in relation to the reference date. Effective year built ranges from 1952 to 1988. Wall lengths range from 12 feet to 17 feet. Leasable areas range from approximately 5,000 square feet to 16,800 square feet. This is to compare the different leasable areas within the property. Net rents range from $6.50 per square feet to $9.71 per square foot. On page 4 is our workup. So we're utilizing an overall net rental rate of $7.62 per square feet. We're utilizing a 7% market vacancy. We're utilizing 3% for non-recoverable expenses and $3.85 per square foot for vacancy shortfall. This results in an NOI of $104,695. We're utilizing a cap rate of 5.75%. This results in a rounded capitalized assets value of $1.821 million. So given the strong state of the industrial market over the last number of years in Winnipeg, the strong forecast for the foreseeable future, I believe the assessed value of $1.821 million to be fair and equitable, and I respectfully ask that the board confirm this value. And I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Mr. Stern.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Doswell, have you ever visited this property?
I know I have not.
So you've not been inside it?
No.
Okay. All right. So again, similar to the other properties here today, we can agree this is primarily much older property, 1957 original build. Okay, and that effective year. So just to be clear, they built a wood frame, call it a storage warehouse at the back of the property, and that's now affecting the model. Though the actual year of the main holding, we'll call it, is 1957.
It's sort of weighted average, basically.
Okay. Yeah, and that affects the cap rate, correct? In the model.
Yes.
And there's no overrides to the model of this.
On this one,
instance.
no. Let me just the standard finish on the premises are average. So yeah.
Okay, so sorry, just so we're clear, because we don't have any details about how the model behaves, but is the effective year built? Does that affect the cap rate of the model?
That will, and also the investment grade of the building property.
Investment grade, okay.
Yeah, so
But
there's a parameter that says investment quality.
And that's like income quality or something like that, you adjust it upwards or down?
Yes.
Okay. And so do the number of premises affect?
No, just the quality of the premises.
And am I not correct in assuming that a premise would be considered part of the property that would be separately leasable?
Well, no, because there could be a warehouse side and an office side, so that would be two.
Okay. But in terms of how the market behaves, that would be considered just one premise. That would typically be considered a single occupant using the office space as well as the storage space, correct?
Yes, but I have seen other properties where they have leased out office space and they utilize the warehouse for themselves or something like that.
Okay, that would be likely an outlier. That would not be typical behavior. typically the premise like this is leased or owned by a single user, and they use the office area and then they use the warehouse area, correct? So it's typically, it's just one premise, really. It's all, it's one occupancy permit company.
Depends on what you mean by typically, but yes, on average, I would say that's how it is.
Okay. So since we're talking about rents today, I think these rents are extremely high, so I just want to go through them. I have a chance to look at them. Rent comp number one, at the time, was that call it a store that sells tactical gear? Very short
yes,
lease?
yeah.
Okay, and they were building a very, very large property down the street in the same block, correct?
I'm not familiar
Okay, the
with
city
that.
just issued that sub at 8:30. So that's,
Yeah.
so is this an interim lease, and might that be higher on a per square footage basis? It was just sort of wait until the building is constructed kind of thing.
I couldn't tell you the specifics, but it is a 2-year lease, and yes, and I have broken down the leases, as you can see,
Right.
with the total area as one and the 2 premises is separate also.
Okay, and 1801 is owner occupied. You're aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, so that it's been appealed a number of times. That's what we'll call a book rent. Now this one's interesting. 1500 St. James. That's a propane fellow who sells propane. He's got tanks on site. He's been there for 15 plus years, correct?
I don't know how long he's been there, but the lease that I utilized was a 2-year lease, so I'm not sure how long it's been there.
And then the 845, that's right next door. Now, at the time, that was a karate school. Is that correct?
No,
Okay, well, if you go through the Google Maps, that's what it was. Is this then the hearth and fireplace showroom?
yes.
Okay, so they would have come in after the karate school. So are you aware of any sort of, did that rent, because it is so high on the street, did that include any kind of build out to accommodate the new tenant? Did you investigate that?
No, I did not. I
Okay.
did not know.
1500, that's my client. Now that leasable area is actually 6,700 square feet. Are you aware of that?
No,
Okay, and that equates when you adjust that, that's 588 a foot.
I think the permit would have, yeah, I know, I haven't.
So it's our client. I was able to actually review that one. And then same building, different space. That's just fully office. That is a sort of healthcare.
So this would be an example of where they've separated office and warehouse there.
But they're not the same tenant. Right. This is a multi-tenant building. It's a high exposure, and it's just to be very clear, our subject is owner occupied. It's not owned by call it an institutional investor, but 1500 Notre Dame is correct.
Sorry,
1500 Notre Dame is indeed owned and managed by a professional or a let's call it a institutional
okay.
trust, correct?
I do not know. Yeah, I don't know who owns it.
And St. Matthew's, that looks like a pretty good comp, except it's just very, very small. And so can we agree it's much smaller than our property? We've got 15,800 square feet. This is only 5,000 square feet. So it would be much smaller, correct?
Yeah, it would be comparable to the other premise there.
Okay, and then on your workup, again, it's not, I understand that this is all model derived, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it's not typical in the industry to separate the premises and apply different lease rates. Typically, we'd see a blended.
No, we've done this the same way for years. So
No, but the way that a broker would put this space on the market, they wouldn't say, well, your office is 685 and your warehouse is 888. It also seems like
depends how it's utilized. So
okay. Would you typically see a warehouse space renting for more on a per square foot basis than finished office?
finish off in office would at least at a higher rate.
Right, okay. Okay, and cap rate again at 5.75. Now, okay. Right. You mentioned the permit value And I know that there was well, we won't talk about that, that's fine, but here's, I guess, my question. The value of the permit, does that influence the resulting assessment once a supplementary is?
No, but when we put the building on the books, there would be,
There's consideration to that?
there's consideration, but not, it's not always full consideration.
Okay, can we agree that that cost does not necessarily equate to market value? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Merritt. You're muted.
I have none. Thank you, Chair. Terry, thank you.
Mr. Mann.
I do, first of all, with respect to the permit, I think that's at page 14.
Yes.
I see that it was taken out in July 30th, 2019, and the status is closed. Do you know when it was closed? When the
It would have been closed in, once the building was constructed and there was an inspection done by PP&D. They would be the one closing out the permit.
so sometime after the July 30th,
Yes.
2019 date?
Yes.
But can you tell me when? Was 2020? Was it still 2019? or-
So we put it on the books in 2020, so I'm assuming it was closed then. Actually, I haven't looked when it was put on. So January 1st, January 1st, 2020, it was put on the books.
Okay. The cap rate now that you have at 5.75. And just for my clarification, is that cap rate generated as a result of the effective age is determined, or is it a blending of the older building with its construction date and the newer building constructed in 2020?
Yeah, so the cap rate would take into account the age and also the risk of the building. So depending on how much investment risk is that inputted into the model.
Because these would seem to me to have this cap rate would have changed from the time
Yes.
the building was conducted or constructed to immediately prior to that.
Yes, it would have gone lower because there's a new premise, a new building on site, but it's also located in a prime street and there's lots of traffic there.
Okay. Now the rental rates, the questions that you were answering from Mr. Story, I believe he referred to was it 19th century? That's the shorter lease, but 1801 Sargent was owner occupied.
Apparently, I have to look into it. When we get comparables, the only comparables we should be getting are non-owner occupied. So I'm assuming if Mr. Jarrett or Mr. Story is saying that, I will look into this and see why it was entered into it.
And this building, 865 King Edward, the subject property is owner occupied?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. Dallas Mohammed, I just have one question in regards to the modeling. So this new warehouse was built, correct? Which then the model sort of changes the overall cap rate,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. So does the model consider the construction grade of the warehouse?
Yeah, yes, so when we enter a building into the model, we pick what is it steel frame, what is it, so we put in all these parameters into the model.
You do,
Yes.
okay, because this is a wood construction, correct?
So when it was entered in, somebody would have gone through the permits and seen what it was and.
Okay, and would that not be considered slightly inferior to a steel construction?
I'm not sure how the model
Masonry.
would, I'm not sure.
Okay, and I'm sorry, you may have spoken to this and I could have missed it, but was there a warehouse previous? Was it demolished and then a new one
There
was
wasn't,
built? Or
there
no?
was nothing demolished.
No,
Yeah.
okay, so there was just this new structure.
Yeah, and it looks like it's the second warehouse that they've added on.
Right, okay, and the first premise of 9,800 square feet, that is some sort of, that's office, we're assuming?
I think Mr. Story might be able to
Okay,
Not better. I think the smaller might be the office.
and you did not inspect this?
I did not
correct?
know.
All right, I thank you. Mr. Story, if you would like to see.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, so 865 King Edward Street. As we've noted, we're an establishment with very low land to building. We've got what we'll call the original building was built in 1957. I have photos here. You can see it's that typical sort of 1950s vintage, we'll call it industrial flex. It has, let's see here, the leasable area is 15,846, and of course that is inclusive of the new storage area. So the in terms of the what goes on here, the fellow who owns it does promotional items. So there is some office space and then some space that you would call wouldn't quite typically call it showroom space, but it would be a finished area. And then there's of course warehousing for the orders that have to go out. Okay, so again, the original building is 9,814 square feet. That's from 57, and 5,000 square feet is that finished space that we talked about. Again, 14 feet ceilings, 40-foot ceilings. I have visited this property, and I can tell you that the second premise, as the assessor would call it, is a single-story wood-framed storage warehouse. It's built at the back. You can see my photos there. It has one sort of elevated dock loading door. Now, I do note that it does not have air conditioning, nor does it have water. It is purely storage space. So that rent that's been applied by the city is exceptionally high from our perspective. I've mentioned that the land to building is considered low at 1.8 to 1, and there are some issues. I know previously, before he built the warehouse at the back, that there's loading. Trying to show you here. There's loading on this side. Here's your main entrance. There's loading around this side, but that's also where all the staff parking is. So loading is a bit of an issue, as is obviously the case in buildings of this vintage. We mentioned that times have changed, so some of these trucks have a bit of an issue with turning radiuses for properties such as this. So it is owner occupied fully. I've provided some rental comps here for you. We are suggesting that the market would treat this as a property with 15,846 square feet, not as two separate properties. So we've used rent comps on page 12 that range from 10,715 square feet, which is sort of on the low end, admittedly, up to something slightly higher on Q8 at 20,000 square feet. These rents range between anywhere from $4 to $4.01 to $6.89. Average is $5.95, median is $6.23. When we consider that some of them are a little bit older, and just using our best judgment, we've applied a rate of $6.75. I think my best comp actually is another property that we handle. It's the last one on Dublin. It's a newer building. I would suggest to you that the location is it's similarly high traffic. It has M2 zoning, it has 24-foot wall heights, and it has a superior land to building at 2.79 to 1. So we've used properties that from border down to Dublin, so from 5 to 10, those are properties that are institutionally owned or managed. And then the top 4 are actually assessor comps that we've seen in other breeds of similar properties. So we've tried to use a blend of our own data and some of the comps that were used by the assessor in previous appeals. And I feel very comfortable based on going outside of that range to the higher end of $6.75. So we've applied that in our calculation. It's a blended rent across the entirety of the premise. Given the fact that, yes, we do understand that there is a new addition, but that suggests to you that new addition was, as opposed to adding a great deal of space, it would in fact subtend the value of the property. They needed it in order to function. So in terms of it being a sort of superfluous amenity, that's not the case. It's an essential component to keeping this business and this property functioning in this in this market. And I do, again, I know that it does not have air conditioning and it does not have water. And I can tell you for certain I was there in the summer and it does not have air conditioning. And so we saw the folks packaging the orders and it's quite hot in a new wood frame storage area. So we have used a 7% capitalization rate. It would likely be lower. Well, it would be lower without that new addition, but we are recognizing, or I'm sorry, the cap rate would be higher without a new addition. But we are recognizing that this property is now able to function. And again, I think maybe these properties were grouped together because they share a commonality where we're considering all these, we're going to call them middle B grade properties. They're mostly user grade and functional, but they're not on the higher end by any stretch of the imagination. So the 7% cap rate and adjusting our rent, and you've heard about our non-recoverables, we do come to a value of $1,261,000, and I do respectfully submit that the value not exceed $1,261,000 based on these very, very specific characteristics of our subject property. And with that, I'm open to your questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Dossman.
Yes, so in regards to your rental comps, your index 1 to 4 are old leases. Are they still, are you aware if they're still leased out currently?
Well, I'm not sure.
Except for, I guess, 3.
Well, I mean, the first one runs to 19, number 3 runs to 21, but it's at 431. I can tell you that one at 431 has 17-foot wall heights. The one above it at 525 has 14-foot wall heights. So again,
at the reference thing, you don't know.
no, I'm not sure, and that's why we have skewed the what we'll call the higher end and certainly above the average and the median of what we've calculated.
Okay, and my questions in regards to non-recoverable expenses and cap rates, so I'll just defer to my previous questions. And those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt.
Arif, again, this property has got a history of appeals.
Yes.
I have no further questions, Madam Chairperson. Thank you.
None to Mr. Scurry.
No.
All right. I
Thank you.
Mr. Bell.
I just looked a couple of questions with respect to the rent comparables on your page 12.
Yes.
I'm looking at, you said the first 4 were derived from previous materials filed by the assessors.
Correct.
Okay. I'm looking at comp number 6. That's King Edward Street. Where in relation to this property, 865 King Edward, is the King Edward Street with column 6?
So that's in the 1800 block.
Okay.
It has an original age of 77 and 79. The city has not applied an effective age. So it's, I mean, it obviously they're saying 79 for ours, so this one makes sense in that capacity. It has 100% finish according to city records, which is higher than ours. And it has 21-foot wall heights, and it has a land to building of 2.82 to 1 with M1. So I guess you could say that it is superior in some regard, but I think it's reasonably comparable.
Okay, your comp number 8 is on Century Street.
Yep.
Which would be likely running northbound.
I'm not sure what
Southbound. Anyway, see, King Edward and Century are bifurcated in that area. One runs north, one runs south. Where in relation to the subject property is your comp number 8?
That's the 1000 block. I don't have it on a map in front of me, but it's again part of the comp selection is based on the geography. So they're all in obviously the St. James Assembly region.
Right.
And this is, I think, reasonably close. So it's the 1000 block of Century.
And comp 9. Like I'm
same, yeah, that's the same property. So those are different units in the same property. So it's a multi-tenant property. And again, wall heights are superior at 18.5 and land to building is superior to 2.9 to 1, and it's zoned M2, so slightly superior. And of course, I use the rents that they range. They go from 460 to 770.
Mm-hmm.
So I think 675 is is supported.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
And I have no questions, Mr. Story. Thank you. Do either of you have a wish for explanation on this property? And we will move on to item number 7. 1810 Selkirk. This property has no preliminary issues, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, it does, the cost of liability.
Okay,
Madam Chairperson, can we take about a 5-minute break?
all right,
Is that okay?
that's fine, we will. And I would like to call this meeting back to order, and we are now on to 1810 Selkirk Avenue, and I understand that there is a class and liability issue with this property. And I'm understanding that you wish to confirm that.
I believe my understanding is that both parties wish to simply confirm.
Yes, yes. You're both in agreement on that. Thank you. Then we will proceed with the property. Mr. Jessel Hammond, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Board revision file number 22-1092. Roll number 070918820000. Address is 1810 Selkirk Avenue. Roll year is 2023. Reference date is April 1st, 2021. Assessed value is $1,224,000. Parcel use is industrial warehouse. Number of buildings is 2. Number of premises is 1. Number of stories is 1. Actual years built ranges from 1976 to 1990. Effective year built range is 1978. Wall height ranges between 10 feet and 20 feet. Zoning is M1 manufacturing light. Land area is 108,902 square feet. Plan area is 5,624 square feet. Same with gross floor area and leasable area, both 5,624 square feet. Land to plan area is 19.36 to 1. So if you turn to my page 9, there is the map of the subject area. It's located in the northwest quadrant of the city. Below that is the subject parcel boundaries. And on page 10 is the overhead view of the subject property. So it is a bus, school bus parking lot, basically, with the garage.
Yeah.
On page appendix 12 is a close-up overhead view of the building, same with page 13, just different sides. And then on page 14 is the subject street views. On page 15 is the building sections. So there's 2 buildings, one with 10-foot ceiling heights and the other with 20-foot ceiling heights. The first building is 4,000 square feet, and the second building is approximately 1,600 square feet. Page 16 is the sales mailer. So the subject property had recently sold approximately 7 years prior to the reference date. So it sold in March 21st, 2014 for its sworn value of $1,525,000. Question 1, you'll note that consideration is the same as the sales price. Number 3, this was an arm's length open market transaction. Number 4, there was no other real estate included with the purchase price. And there was a market value appraisal or report of opinion done on this property per question 5. You'll note that question 15, they're indicating it is in good condition at the time of purchase. And then on page 17, again, they paid cash for it in the amount of $1,525,000. And then page 18 is the status of title, 18 and 19. Again, you'll note consideration on page 19 was $1,525,000. Then on page, actually, just going back to page 19, you'll see the originating instrument, their registration number 4466335 -1. That is included on the next page, page 20. You'll note that this was signed by the Secretary of Treasury for question number 6 there for the Winnipeg School Division. They're indicating that the fair market value at that date on March 19th, 2014 was in fact $1,525,000. So going back to my comparables on page 3. So all comparables are industrial warehouse properties like the subject. All leases are current in relation to the reference date. Effective year build ranges from 1955 to 1987. Wall heights range from 14 feet to 18 feet. Leasable areas range from approximately 4,000 square feet to 6,250 square feet. Net rents range from $8.25 per square foot to $10.08 per square foot. On the following page is my land comparable. So this property does have surplus land. These are the comparables utilized. So the average selling price of the comparables is approximately $7.97 per square foot. We're assessing the surplus land at $4.54 per square foot, and the surplus land we calculate to be 86,250 square feet for a total assessment for surplus land of 391,840 square feet. Or sorry, $391,480. Page 5 is our workup. So we're utilizing an overall net rental rate of $8.27. We're utilizing a 4% market vacancy. We're utilizing 3% for non-recoverables and $3.85 per square foot for vacancy shortfall, which results in an NOI of $42,444. We're utilizing a cap rate of 5.1%. There's the surplus land value of $392,000. So this results in a rounded capitalized and assessed value of $1,224,000. So just my personal thoughts, I think the sale price of $1,525,000 should have been captured somewhere between the time of sale and the reference date, but I'm just not sure why it hasn't. And I'm thinking that the cap rate is that high because there's a sale somewhere registered in the model. Anyway, so given the strong state of the Winnipeg industrial market over the last number of years, the strong forecast for the foreseeable future, the actual selling price of $1.52 million. This was 7 years prior to the reference date. I believe that the assessed value of $1,224,000 to be more than fair and equitable, and I respectfully ask that the board confirm this value. And I'm open to questions.
I thank you, Mr. Story.
I have some questions, yes. Thank you. So, Mr. Alcombe, I think you misspoke. You said the reason this cap rate is so high, this cap rate is exceptionally low, is it not?
Oh, sorry, low, yes.
Okay. That's fine. Now let's just talk about that sale very quickly. IAAO does mention schools specifically. Do they not?
I'm not sure.
In the,
I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that.
okay, so you're not aware that the sales and the standards and verification adjustments.
If you say so,
Okay.
I'll agree.
And okay, and when we look at the sales mailer now, I mean, there's no cap rates. They suggest it's unknown if there was a prospectus, and presumably the person filling it out, with all respect, is not necessarily a valuation profession. Is that fair to say?
Well, we didn't ask the evaluator to fill out the sales. It's just the property owner to fill it out. They're a senior accountant, so.
And that's what they paid for it, and that's fine, but do you think they may have been, let's say, do you think they may have been motivated in a way that another purchaser might not be motivated to purchase this property?
I'm not sure their motivations.
Do you know who the vendor was?
The vendor is a numbered company from what I understand.
Right, did you look into,
No, I didn't do that.
so you're not aware that the vendor is in fact First Student, who are operators of school buses?
No, I'm not sure who they are.
And so in your experience done with the Winnipeg industrial market, can we agree that there are very few yards like this that house school buses or large trucks?
Yes.
Okay, so, and then it's also right down the street from Vital Transit, so this is almost like a conglomerate of area where this type of thing goes on, where they're parking, they're getting large amounts of land, and they're having to park large vehicles, correct?
Yes, just to mention in your prior question, this was they are indicating that this is an open market transaction.
Sure. Yeah, okay, and do you know if they would have had any relationship with First Student prior to? I mean, it would just, I don't know for certain, but I would just imagine that
I do
an
not know.
operator of buses, their main client would be.
There may be, but
schools or
I
that.
couldn't tell you, but they may be, but it is an open market transaction, so, yeah.
And we can agree, I think, that there's a fairly limited use for a property with this sort of, with this much land, this small.
Actually,
office area.
no, there's a property right beside it that houses mechanical equipment
Right.
in the yard there. And I believe the yard is even bigger.
Okay, and that's probably a land economics issue where land out in this area, the highest and best use is just raw storage, so to speak. It's unpaved. It's just, you just park large vehicles there, right?
Yes.
Okay. The effective year, that's just a weighted average, I'm guessing. Now, the initial, just to fast forward a bit, we're not going to argue the adjustment to the land. We think that's fine. But something that I did notice, and this will go back to when we talked about earlier, the additional land value of $392,000 is based on what the city's calling surplus land. And admittedly, there's a lot of land here, but in terms of how the city carves off what they deem to be surplus, they've used 86,250, correct?
Sorry.
So initially, let me just phrase this more concisely. The land area, the actual physical land area is 108,902 square feet. Okay, so the land that's deemed to be surplus is 86,250 square feet, correct?
Yes.
So that leaves us, and if we're not disputing that land value, what we're left with is this older building, and the remaining land is 22,652 mathematically, correct?
Correct.
And when we divide that to come to our land to building by 5,624, it's 4.1.
Okay.
So would you not agree with me then that a standard land to building is, even by the city's own records and how they treat surplus land, is indeed 4-1?
No, I wouldn't agree.
Is that a coincidence?
It could be, yes.
Okay. All right. Just want to point that out. So now that rental rate would be considered very high. You mentioned in the model, you have the ability to adjust the income value or condition or some such thing. Would this be at the very, very high end, given this property's location and physical characteristics?
No, I believe that the other comparables that I have are even higher there.
Okay, but the comparables don't inform the model. The comparative, do they?
Yes, there's all kinds of parameters that go into the model. Yeah.
So how do we get to this property?
So it would
827.
be looking at comparable leases. It would be looking at the actual parameters that are put on the premise.
Okay, so would the model be outputting this 827 based on a 19-to-1 land to building or a 4-to-1 land to building?
It would just be the rent would be based on, it wouldn't be based on land, it would be based on comparable leases. So it would just look at premises.
So it doesn't consider land to building.
No,
Okay. Okay, and then let's just talk about this area. We can agree, I think that you mentioned there's a lot of kind of raw storage area here. Can we agree that this is not a necessarily prime or desirable area in terms of for most users?
it is prime. It's Keewatin and Selkirk. So there is a large industrial neighborhood there.
Okay, and okay, so I guess we can disagree with that, but that 5.1% cap rate would fall well below the 20th percentile that you're suggesting,
Yes.
and well below what all of the brokers are suggesting. So can you give me some sense as to why, with all the cap rates that we've seen today, why this specific property would be so exceptionally low?
Well, you can see with the sale price, we still don't get to the sale price with a high or a low cap rate of that. So
Okay, so then is the city, as part of the pun, are we backing into the sales price by adjusting that cap rate below market?
no, but it's still based on the sale price. It's still
Okay, that's fair.
and if it's not us just pulling cap rates out of the air. It's these buildings are selling in Winnipeg.
Okay, but if the properties that we're seeing from, you know, the 50s and 60s, the model is, and you quite rightly adjusted the cap rates. I think we're still a little ways away, but with a property that's built in 1978 with 10 to 20 foot wall heights, M1 zoning, and it's metal frame, I fail to see how it could have a 5.
In my personal opinion, I think this building is incorrectly classified as storage warehouse. I think it should be correctly classified as maybe vehicle service garage.
Well,
and
but not be a service garage, it would be a transit or perhaps something.
It would be similar to that. I think this is a garage for buses.
And then just quickly, you are talking about the comps, the rental comps, none of them are cartage or
No, they
transit. And in fact, there are a number of retail showrooms on here. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure if there's showrooms for retail.
And then even, you know, the one on Sargent, I'm well aware of that. That's Hooper's. They used to be an exchange. That's they sell mid-century furniture. Correct? Okay, and and can we agree that locationally all of these are superior?
No.
Okay, we'll disagree on that. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt, did you have any questions to the assessor? And you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, I have a few questions. I'm not sure whether Arif can tell me my answers, but you can attempt to, or else I can ask Mr. Story. I'm concerned about the sale that happened in 2014, and they paid $1,525,000. Now, I think Mr. Story, and I'm just gonna, he alluded to the fact that it was the sale was to the school division, but it was the operator of the buses that owned the property. Is that correct?
That's what Mr. Story alluded to.
Yeah.
So I'll just. I'll just note that Mr. Renee Appleman's on page 20 of my brief, where I show the instrument, he did sign there indicating that that is fair market value. So if that was not the fair market value, I don't know if we want to go on record saying that Mr. Renee Appleman signed something that he shouldn't have been signing. I don't know.
Okay, but you don't know whether it was put up for sale or whether it was a private sale or anything like that. Do you know that? Probably not.
According to the sales mailer, question number 3, they indicate it was an open market transaction. So I'm not sure if it was put up for sale, and then I am assuming that the somebody willing to sell would have marketed out somewhere before.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So when you're evaluating the property, you're coming in with an assessed value below, your $300,000 below what they paid.
Yes. So again,
So,
in my opinion, my personal opinion is I think this property is incorrectly classified as storage warehouse, when it should have been classified as
yeah, well, you can say that, but I'm looking at the value.
yes.
And it's $300,000 that that's, I would say that is missing. So how do you, put the value, because nobody's gonna sell the property of less than what they paid for it.
Yes, I think it should be assessed higher, in my personal opinion. Had I looked for comparables for garages, I'm sure it would have come in higher.
So in a nutshell, your land, there's no, you both agree in regards to the excess land, value-wise. So it's just the building itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so.
I think that's all the questions that I have. So thank you very kindly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
But just with respect to the 5.1% cap rate, and the age of the building or the age of the buildings, the cap rate at 5.1, you can't tell us, I think you said, whether that includes a adjustment downward as a result of the excessive land, or is that something the model does not take into account?
Yeah, and I think the way the model works is it would look at the risk that's involved. So I don't think it looks at land, but I couldn't get. I'm not in the modeling section. So.
Okay, no, fair enough. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Madam Chairperson, can I just ask one more question?
Yes.
Okay. Arif, what is the frontage along there for the subject property? Do you know offhand?
I might have it in my.
We know it's quite a big lot, but
Yeah,
what is the frontage?
78.029 meters.
78.29, eh? Meters.
78.029.
Okay, so that's about 240 feet.
And then lengthwise, it's approximately 129.662.
So that's big frontage.
Yeah, and my page appendix or my page 9 will have the those values there and the subject parcel boundaries.
And the zoning on it is what?
M1 manufacturing light.
Okay, M1, hey? Okay. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
So, everything is model driven, correct?
Yes,
I
it is.
agree.
Yeah,
Okay, and we did not inspect this.
no, I've driven by it many times. Yeah, by.
So, just to go back to this sale of 1.5. You have nothing in your notes in regards to a listing price?
No, I can't go back that far. Once buildings are sold, unfortunately, the agents tend to take the listings down. So,
I just know in some other briefs that I've seen that.
Yeah,
they have a copy of the. Okay, that's fine.
if the way when we come across something, we just save it automatically. It doesn't matter for.
Okay. Just in regards to the building, because you've got 1976 to 1990. Can you speak to that difference?
Yes, so on page 15, And then we've, so you'll note that one building, the first building was built in 76. And it's 4,000 square feet, 20-foot wall height. And the other building was built in 1990. 1,624 square feet with 10-foot wall height.
Okay, thank you. And did you say that this sale would be affecting the model in regards to the cap rate?
No, what I would said was the investment grade of the building and the property would be affecting the cap rate and where the location is. So I think when maybe somebody looked at it, I couldn't further. I'm just not in the modeling section to answer.
No.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right, thank you. That's all my questions. Mr. Story, would you like to proceed?
Yes. May I just ask one very quick question, but I think you're both just to be very clear. You're not suggesting that this property was exposed to the open market, are you?
According to the sales mailer,
No, it says that it's open market. It doesn't say that it's exposed to the market.
I'm not sure if it was exposed.
I just wanted to just clarify, just so we're on the same page. Okay, it's 1810 Selkirk Avenue. So we've established that this is a bus service and dispatch building that is used by the school division. Now, I will point out, and just a quick calculation, we're talking about price per square foot for a property that's the city is part of the reason why we're here today is that very low cap rate. But when we looked at the actual assessment, it's about $218 per square foot for the building alone. That's very, very, it's very high. I suppose that considers land as well, but there's some distortion there. I think it's been probably due to that sale. I will suggest to you that the purchaser is motivated. They purchased a school bus compound from another person who was operating a school bus compound. That's a fairly specific use, certainly more specific than what we see typically. So in terms of that sale, I don't know that it was exposed to the open market, and I don't know that the owner would have been aware that this would be used against them in this hearing. So one sale doesn't make a market, so we are looking again to a market value of this property. So yes, service building and office used by the Winnipeg School Division, constructed in 2 stages. There's a 4,000 square foot rigid steel building with 20-foot wall heights. That's from 1976. There's a 1,624 square foot building with 10-foot walls. That's built in 1990. It's rectangular in shape, and again, it is zoned M1. The land to building ratio is 19.36 to 1. When we accept the excess land value of $392,000 of $86,250, that equates to $4.54 for this land. We think that's reasonable. There's no dispute there. Now we have to recognize that once we've dealt with that land, we are now dealing with the income value of the improvement adjusted to a minimum standard land to building of 4 to 1. So we've looked to the market, and we have we're not a mile apart on rents here. We're using $750. We recognize that it is transport related, but we haven't used, retail showrooms. So we've got some comps on Logan, Hewitt, Salto, Sherwin, and Border. All good quality rents that range from an average of $654 to a median of $635. So we've erred on the high side of this range at $7.50. We think that's reasonable. Again, to add a very, very high rent based on a very high land building would be tantamount to double counting. So once we've disposed of that excess land issue, again, we're dealing with a property that is a minimum standard 4 to 1. So and that's commensurate with these comps that we've used in general. So we've used $7.50. Cap rate on this property, we're suggesting again 7%, which leads us to an income value on the Again, the minimum land to building 4:1 with the property as it stands, just under about $100 a foot at 525,603. When we add back the adjustments, the 392, we come to a market value of 917,603, which we then calculate to 918,000. Not sure why I got an erroneous number there below my workup. But we are suggesting from a market perspective, 917,603, and that's based on a reasonable market cap rate. I think that if that sale wasn't there, we would not be talking about $1.2 million for this property. So with that being said, that is my presentation, and we are suggesting. I'm sorry, why that is. So the number that is appropriate is in my workup. And there's 918. So we are suggesting the value from a market perspective, when we agree with that land calculation, ought to be $918,000. And I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dassel, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Stewart, you said that the owner was motivated to purchase this building, and that's why they paid a high price for it.
I think that we can infer that I mean, we don't see that many properties with this very, very specific use. I would suggest that I don't know that First Student and the Winnipeg School Division were related, but I can tell you that there are not that many charter bus companies in the city of Winnipeg, and the opportunity for this property to come to market, I'm sure they were certainly motivated by needing a facility of this nature. I think that makes sense. We also know from the municipal board that one sale doesn't make a market. So I've never heard the assessment department say that they actually use the sale to come to the value. So yeah, I think ultimately the crux of the issue here is that we don't see a 5.1 cap anywhere, and we don't see any support from the city. So we're using a market perspective. We're not putting any weight on the sale.
Okay, so would you say that the Secretary Treasurer of the Winnipeg School Board Division erred in signing this when they indicated fair market value was $1.52 million?
No, absolutely not. I'm saying that that's what they paid for it, but they may have motivations. I don't think that they were made aware that an assessor would use that against them at a later date. I don't think that the department necessarily makes that clear. You said, is this what you paid for it? They said yes. They said it's an open market. Did you follow up with them? Questions?
It doesn't say, is this what you paid for? It says fair market value.
No, it actually does say, is this consideration?
Page 20.
Yeah. Okay. So if we look at on the sales questionnaires, says is consideration paid shown above the correct total sales price? Right, that's the first question.
That's not where I'm looking at.
Okay, so that's the first question that you ask the purchaser, and they said yes, that's what they paid for it. Right, then they asked the date, condition, but there's a point here that you didn't mention in your presentation on page 17, where you ask about the capitalization rate. They say unknown. They say, are there any financial details or investment prospectus available prior to the conclusion of sale? And they say unknown. Okay. So we know that that's what they paid for it.
Okay, but that wasn't my question. My question was on page 20 of my brief.
Yeah.
The Secretary Treasurer signs there on March 19, 2014. And it says, I certify that the land affected by this transfer as whole has a fair market value of $1,525,000.
Sure.
So are they in error saying that?
I'm not saying it's an error. I'm saying that they're not an appraiser. They're telling you that, yeah, this is what we paid for it.
But they did have an appraisal done. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, in the sales mailer,
okay,
they indicate on page 16.
Yeah.
Question number 5.
Yeah.
Was your market value appraisal report or
opinion of value?
Okay.
Okay. So that could have been done by the vendor. It could have been done by the purchaser. It could have been done for insurance purposes. We don't know. We don't know what the inputs there are. And this is also we're getting back to 2014. So who knows? We don't effectively, my position as I've stated here is that we're not putting a great deal of weight into this sale because typically motivated participants in the market would not pay this value for this property. And that's evidenced by the fact that we don't see anybody, the city included, suggesting that a 5.1 cap is appropriate. So I think that, ultimately, I think the city is trying to justify a 5.1 cap by using the sale, but once we get into it, we see that it's maybe these parties were known to each other, or maybe there's a very limited market. There's only one sale. We can't really we're using rents that are from retail showrooms. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And if we didn't have this sale, then you certainly wouldn't be suggesting that it's worth $1.2 million. That's my comments.
But you would agree they did sign saying that the fair market value was 1.5.
This is what they're saying they paid. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
All right, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt, did you have any questions for Mr. Story?
Yes, I do. Mr. Story, I've made some notes. You are seeking for the subject property 918,000, correct?
That is, yes.
Somewhere, and I can't remember where exactly, you have a figure of 1,058,000.
Yeah, that's an error. Yeah, that is an error. It's likely from a different calculation.
We can disregard that.
Scratch that, please. Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Mann.
Yes, just a couple of questions with respect back to the sale price in 2014. Everything we've been discussing, or most of the things we've been discussing with respect to motivation, with respect to appraisal, with respect to everything else, that's speculation. We don't have any of that evidence. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Okay. One of the things you mentioned was that, and again, speculative speculation, was that it would be unlikely that someone might have signed the fair market value or said that it was fair market value if they knew it was the value was going to be held against them at a later date. But by signing this land transfer, and I'm looking at paragraph 20, that's the fair market value on which the land transfer tax at the time is going to be based.
Right, that's what they paid for the property, right? So I think that.
But then there's the land transfer tax.
That's correct.
Able to land titles on top of that.
Yes.
So by signing that at that point, that land transfer tax was immediately due and owing.
Sure. Okay. So now, just to be clear, though, if the vendor and the purchaser had a business relationship prior, which I can only, again, speculation, because they're both, it's a limited market in the school bus industry in the city and province. If they were to check off that it was not non-arm's length, would we still be having this discussion? I think that sometimes these forms are filled out by folks who are not necessarily, they don't understand there's some implication in the board of revision that sale price might be used against them. But I agree with your comment that they are suggesting that's the fair market value, that's what they paid for it, and upon which the land transfer tax would be based. That is correct.
And this document was prepared and presented for registration by council at Darcy Deacon.
That's.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Story, I think you indicated you'd inspected this property.
No, I haven't, but agents from our firm have in the past, so we have notes on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just speak to those notes? Do you have?
I don't have them in front of me, but I know that we have them in our file, and that's, again, it's not, there's no condition issue. We know that there's servicing and storing, well, there's servicing buses in the warehouse, storing buses on site, and then they have a small administrative office at the front side of it. So.
Okay. And your land value on the excess of 392,000?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you have a number for square footage on that?
Yeah, so they used 454 per square foot. We reviewed it prior to submission. We accepted it.
Okay. Thank you. That is all my questions. Do either of you have a wish for summation on this property?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. We will move on to the last item on our docket, which is 467 Jarvis. And I believe there are no preliminary issues with this property.
No.
Who would like to proceed? Mr. Jocelyn?
Thank you. Board revision file number 22-2393, roll number 14000201350. Address is 467 Jarvis Avenue. Roll year is 2023, reference date is April 1st, 2021. Assessed value is $1,282,000. Parcel use is industrial warehouse. There's one building, one premise, one story, actual year built, and effective year are both 1976. Wall height is 16 feet. Zoning is M2 manufacturing general. Land area is 25,728 square feet. Plan area is 16,576 square feet. Leasable area is 16,500 square feet. And land to plan area is 1.55 to 1. On page 9 is page 8 is the the map of the subject area. It's located in the northwest quadrant of the city. At the bottom is the subject parcel boundaries. That's located on the northwest corner of Jarvis Avenue and Power Street, sorry. The aerial view on page 9. And on page 10 is the rear aerial view. At the bottom of page 10 is the subject street view. Excuse me. And then on page 11, at the top in the middle there is the street views of the side, looking from the corner, and at the rear lane. Building sections are located at the bottom of page 11. So one building with 16,576 square feet with a wall height of 16 feet. On the following page is the income and workup, the income and expense mailer that we submitted. And you'll note it's fully owner occupied. However, there is a book rent. And I'll just work out the book rent for you. Of $7.82. Excuse me. So going back to my page 3, I have my comparables there. So all subjects like the comparable are industrial warehouse properties. All leases are current in relation to the reference date. Effective year ranges from 1964 to 1990. Wall heights average from 14 feet to 18 feet. Leasable areas range from approximately 15,000 square feet to 19,800 square feet. And net rents range from $6.50 per square feet to $8.78 per square foot. On the following page is our workup. So we're utilizing an overall net rental rate of $6.53 per square foot. And a 6.5% market vacancy. We're utilizing 3% for non-recoverable expenses and $3.85 for vacancy shortfall. This results in an NOI of $93,591. We're utilizing a cap rate of 7.3%. And this results in a rounded capitalized and assessed value of $1,282,000. So given the strong state of the Winnipeg industrial market over the last number of years and the strong forecasts for the foreseeable future, just my personal opinion on this property, this was converted from a multi-tenant to a single tenant. I believe, and you'll note that the rent is pretty, the rent is for a 16,500 square foot building, but personally, I think the best and highest and best use of this property would probably be multi-tenant, and they would probably bring in a higher rent. But either way, they're still charging themselves $7.82 per square feet. So again, so given the strong forecast for the foreseeable future in the Winnipeg industrial market, I believe that the assessed value of $1.282 million to be fair and equitable. And I respectfully ask that the board confirm this value, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr.
I have some
Story?
questions. Yes, thank you. Mr. Das Mohammed, you mentioned that there's a book rent
Yes.
and that's informing your position today,
No, our rent is lower than the book rent.
right? But the book rent has no bearing on.
No.
Okay, and I think they even mentioned that it would be a gross book rent to further complicate things.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let's disregard the book rent. So not. Okay, can we agree this is in the north end?
Yes, it's one block east of McPhillips by the casino there, I believe.
One block. This is at the rail yard. You ever visited this property?
I've driven by it, actually, the last cycle I haven't seen this.
So you have a sense of this area that's called it's called Jarvis Duffering. This would be typically
Yes.
considered there's some challenges there. Can we agree on that? Not a lot of private investment in Jarvis and Duffering, and that's been the case for
Well,
many
I don't
decades.
agree, but
Okay. You don't have any comps in the north end, is that fair?
no, I just couldn't find a large comparables in the area.
Okay, I have one I'll speak to in mind, but it's right down the street. It was in an assessor brief, but that's fine. So in terms of Mountain, we're in the well, can we agree that the rent comps that you've used here are all in superior locations? Is that fair?
They're all in industrial building or industrial sections. I mean, yes, they would be somewhat superior in location.
Okay, and they're in,
and the rents do reflect the superior
Okay.
location.
just to be very clear, we're at the rail yards.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact map, but I have visited this property in 2019.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's just go through these
actually,
spots.
yeah, there's the so.
You can see them in my briefs there.
Okay.
There's the.
Yeah, sorry, Arlington,
Yeah.
no, sorry.
Very, very much in the north end. Now, that is not an industrial park that we're in here, but these comps are all in industrial parks. Is that fair? Well, except for Sargent isn't, I guess, technically an industrial park, but the balance of these are what we call more typical industrial areas. Is that fair?
Notre Dame is okay.
And Notre Dame is redeveloped, perhaps. That's a redeveloped.
I'm not sure if it was redeveloped. If you say so, I'll agree.
And Mountain, we know that well. That's in the Inkster Industrial Park. That's the folks who do the school photographs, correct?
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
but you'll note that our rent is not anywhere near those properties.
right. But I don't think it's that's fair. But I'm just suggesting that just because you're using rents that are much higher than discounting back, I just don't think these are good as a starting point. The one on Sargent, again, we've established, I think, is that's an internal rent. That's owner occupied.
If you say so, I will look into it.
St. Matthews, that has that's a warehouse with a good exposure and a showroom. Were you aware of that property?
I have not visited the property.
It's fine. Now everything is indeed model derived here. Is that fair to say? Okay. Yeah, I think that is about. Now it has a higher cap rate than the other properties. Is that based on location or what is that based
Assuming
on?
yes.
Okay. Now, if it has a higher cap rate based on location,
Well, I wouldn't say just location, and it is. Yeah, I wouldn't just say it was just not based on location. So.
okay. Okay, and it's a 7.3 cap that the model is kicking out, but we don't know the exact details as to why. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt, questions to the assessor?
I do not have any questions, Madam Chairperson. Thank you.
Mr. Mann?
No, I don't think.
And I have none either at this time. Mr. Story, if you'd like to give us your brief.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so here we are. Again, we're in the north end on Jarvis. Course 467, it's a one-story masonry building. It's being used for industrial purposes. That's the northwest corner of Jarvis Powers. So they call this Dufferin. Again, very close to the rail yard. You can see photos of my brief. We have a wall height of 16 feet. Again, quite low by today's standards. Floor area is 16,576 with a reasonably low land to building of 1.55 to 1. And it is zone M2, so right in the middle of that industrial zoning. I provided some comps. Now we recognize that the property is indeed owner occupied. I've tried to get as close to this area as I could. My best comp is on Jarvis. It's right down the street, 76. It's about, I'm going to say about 2.5 blocks away. It is slightly larger, and its rent is $4.52. It's an older rent, that's fine, but it's one that we found that was submitted by the assessor. So that's just for illustrative purposes. We've included that here. Then we have a number of rents that are newer, and they range from say $4.75 up to about $6.50 or so. So ultimately, our average is $5.75. Our median is $6. I will suggest to you that Keewaydin and Paramount Mountain Church are all superior to Jarvis. I haven't put a lot of weight on that first one. It's older, but it does show that the rents typically in this section would be lower. Cap rate should be higher. There's some challenges there. So ultimately, we've used a market rent of $5.75. And we've adjusted our cap rate to 8%. Again, this is what we would call non-investment grade. We have an older building. It has low land to building. It has low ceiling heights, and it has a challenging location. So ultimately, 8% is what we've used. We're not too far away from the assessor in this scenario. We're coming to a value of $1,015,000. Of course, we do continue to apply 5% for non-recoverables, 2% for structural reserve. Vacancy is in at 7%, which is typical. I think the assessor is using 6.5 on this one, but we typically use 7% for these properties in the north. So all that to say that our resulting value is calculated as $1,015,000, and we do expect to submit the value not exceed $1,015,000 for this cycle. And thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dossman, have any questions?
Okay. Mr. Story, you're aware that the current owner used to be a tenant in that building. Is that correct? I think it was back in 2007, 2008.
I can't verify that, but that makes sense. I do know what they do there, and I've been there a number of times over the years. So yeah, that would make sense. They do. It's a laboratory.
And so, and then at one time, they got rid of the tenants. They bought the building, got rid of the tenants, I take it, and utilized the whole building.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. They bought it for a very low price, but again, we don't consider that sale. But it was a long time ago. But I think even at that time, that would have been a reasonably low sale price. But yes, I believe that to be true.
Okay.
Sure.
And you said your best comp was on Jarvis. So it is about 38% larger than the comparable.
Yeah, it's an older. It's older, so it's not. Again, I'm not putting a great deal of weight on it, but I know that the. You mentioned earlier that the city has all of the INEs. So I guess my question is why the city wouldn't use Dufferin or Jarvis as a comp for Jarvis.
So I didn't use it because it looks like the lease expired in 2017. So
right.
I'm not sure.
But it's not the only building on Jarvis. But if you have every rent in the north, we can certainly look down. I don't have a great deal of leases on Jarvis and Dufferin, but I think that those two streets in particular, if you had them, would be. My sense is that those rental rates would be lower. But I've used rents that are in superior locations would typically be higher, but I've skewed to the lower end. So I've tried to balance that consideration with the lack of those lower range rents.
Okay, and your 8% cap,
Yes.
How did you come to an 8%?
Sure. So as you know, we've provided you with our study. We've bifurcated by quality, and within those in those ranges of quality. Location obviously is a huge factor. So in all real estate and all land economics, location is a primary driver of value. If we're looking at anticipation for the ability for the income stream to appreciate over time, I would suggest to you that this area would give an investor some pause. So we would categorize this as non-investment grade, given the age, given the location, given the low land to building, given the low ceiling heights.
And sorry, you did say you utilize the cap rate, your cap rate study, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have a sale that's not totally dissimilar on McPhillips. And I know even if you don't agree with our methodology, even though it's similar to yours, that's north of 9%. And would probably have a greater, it has better access to traders, it's closer to the airport. So I think 9 or 8% on the subject is quite reasonable.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt, questions?
I thank you, Madam. Mr. Story, when's the last time you were in this building?
Inside many years ago. So I've been outside of it a number of times, but not inside. Yeah.
Does the subject property front the rail yard?
No, it's from, okay, you got it here. It's on the corner of Jarvis and Powers. The rail yard is Sutherland. It's kitty corner to what I'm going to call a scrapyard. So it's in that general kind of range. It's about a block away from Dufferin. So yeah, it's in that, well, I guess we used to call it Dufferin Jarvis section.
You feel as if the cap rate of 8% that you're using is applicable to the subject?
Absolutely. It perhaps should be higher, quite frankly, but I think the resulting value makes sense. But no, 8% I feel very strongly about on this property. Again, we have that sale on McPhillips that's north of 9. 8% is I think conservative and realistic. And we're not that far away, I suppose, from the assessor at 7.3. But yeah, 8% given this area. Yeah, I feel strongly about that. I think it's correct.
All right, I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mann.
I have no questions.
So you said that you were in this building.
Many years ago. It would have been, I'm going to say 15 years ago, perhaps.
That's fine, because now there's another tenant in there.
It's somewhat different, but when I was there, it was based on the fact that there was you're dropping off a sample, air quality sample at a laboratory, and that's what they do there now. So it seems that as time has gone on, they've taken over the whole building. But yeah. So
it is a laboratory facility of some
sort. They hold samples, do some sort of testing. Yeah.
Okay. That is all my questions on this property. Gentlemen, do either of you have a wish for summation on this?
I'm good, thank you.
I think we're good.
Thank you both for your presentations this morning and your patience with our tech issues. And this hearing is adjourned.
Hey, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we'll have to do more of these in person. It's fun.
It's much more enjoyable.
It is much more.
Yes.
Yeah.